Okay, we're live. Hello and welcome to Expert Advice Live. This is our recurring series from the Student Doctor Network covering different admissions topics. Today we have a special guest in addition to Dr. Emil Chuck, who is our usual expert who's on the line. We also have Alexis Catanzarite, who is from Case Western University. She is the Associate Director of Healthcare Careers at Case Western Reserve University, where she oversees the pre-med and pre-health advising team. And I will let her go ahead and introduce herself and talk a little bit about her story and how she became a pre-health advisor.
Yeah, thank you so much, Laura. I appreciate it. Well, as Laura said, my name is Alexis Catanzarite, and I'm the Associate Director of Healthcare Careers at Case Western Reserve University, where I oversee our pre-med advising team. A little bit about me. I am a first-generation college student from Southern West Virginia, and I have a master's degree in rhetoric and composition from the University of Kansas. And before I came to Case Western in 2019 to do this work, I was actually also the senior pre-medical advisor at the University of Kansas for 4 years. So my really bad joke for everybody is that every day for the last 10 years of my life, I get up in the morning and I eat pre-med for breakfast. So I always really like to talk about these things. I like to think about strategy. And one of the things that I'm most passionate about because of my background in writing is about helping students understand like what's the best, most compelling, most strategic way to tell your story in a way that advocates for yourself in this process as you're preparing to, engage in the application cycle for medical school.
So thank you so much. And I know for those of you who've been hopefully following us with these Expert Advice live sessions, I used to be a pre-health advisor, and in contrast to Alexis, my background is certainly much more in the sciences, and I have a PhD in cell biology that I got from Case Western Reserve and have my bachelor's degree in biomedical engineering from Duke University. So it just kind of gives you an idea of the broad variety of individuals who are pre-health advisors and what their backgrounds really are. But we all do share a lot in common with regards to making sure that your questions regarding how to be prepared for medical school or any health professions program are as best addressed as we can. We also have many colleagues who are pre-health advisors who are much more trained, for example, in career services, as well as others that are probably more academic advisors, so people who can really steer you one way or another regarding your choice of major or how you want to sort of organize your academic career. We also certainly have a lot of people who are pre-health advisors who are in the graduate sphere, so they are involved with postbacks or they're involved with special master's programs. And certainly one of the things that we've been doing at HPSA and the Student Doctor Network is we've also been highlighting our Advisor of the Year program. So we've also highlighted so many other people who are current healthcare professionals who are also giving back and are also really fantastic advisors too. So we wanted to make sure we had an opportunity to talk to you about how to work with pre-health advisors. And so I'm really glad that Alexis is able to share with us her experience, at least at Case Western Reserve University, and certainly to give you guys an idea of how you could really leverage the strengths that a pre-health office can offer you. So let's start with, since you're in the office right now, let me see, let me get to the right one here. Your question is, oops, Laura's doing this too. Okay, that's what was happening. Just tell us a little bit about the office itself.
Laura, did you have something?
Oh, I just wanted to point out, if people have questions, if you can put those in the comments on wherever you're watching this. And I apologize for interrupting, just to get the technical stuff out of the way. So if you're on YouTube, LinkedIn, or Facebook, please feel free to put your comments there. We will answer them live. And the other thing I want to point out is that Alexis has graciously donated her time here, and she is doing this as herself. She is not on behalf of Case Western specifically. So just wanted to put that disclaimer out there as well. So let's go ahead and switch back over to talking a little bit about Case Western. How is the pre-health advising office organized there?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Laura. I think that it's an important question because it is organized differently at a lot of different institutions. You might find a standalone, independent, pre-professional advising office You may perhaps find that pre-health advising lives in an academic department like biology or chemistry. But at Case Western Reserve University, pre-health advising is centralized in the Career Center. That's where my team is located under the umbrella of career, because that is the ultimate goal here, right? I think it's a really ideal place for it to be located, because I do so much more than just, talk about the medical school application cycle. As somebody who's located in the Career Center, I also network with employers. I also get recruiters to come to campus. So it is a little bit more holistic, a little bit more than just kind of the rudimentary stuff that you might find in a standalone office, but I think that's a great place for it. And as far as how we engage with students, I'm struggling to think of how we don't engage with students, to be honest with you. We obviously have one-on-one advising appointments. There is no barrier to entry to us. Freshmen can meet with us. There is no expiration date. Alumni can meet with us. We serve everybody always and forever. We do lots of workshops. We do lots of info sessions. I mentioned recruiters. We host lots of recruiter events as well. Because we are located in the Career Center, we're also part of the Career Fair, which is great because we're out there getting those recruiters to come to that Career Fair day. And we have a lot of online resources that are internal to our pre-med and pre-health students through a learning management system called Canvas that is all about walking them through the application process for medical school, for dental school, whatever their particular path is. We're here to talk with them about it. We're here to have workshops about it. But if somebody just wants to know at 2 a.m., how do I send my transcripts to AMCAS, they can log on to Canvas and get that answer really quickly.
Well, thanks for answering that. And as mentioned before, every single institution has different structures. So as Alexis has mentioned, sometimes there's the pre-health advising office that's basically based out of your biology department or some of the science departments that are close by. Again, especially if you have like a tenured professor or someone near tenured in terms of being an associate professor, be sort of the designated go-to for anybody interested in health professions careers. You also can have set aside an actual advising office. When I was a pre-health advisor, my office was under academic advising. So it was different. We had something than career services because I was under the office that really helped people with regards to selecting courses and also managing things like if you got a little bit in trouble with your GPA and, we had to send all these emails about you need to make sure your GPA is above a certain number or else we'll have to put you on probation, those sorts of things. So those policies were in the office that I was working with back when I was at George Mason University. So whatever you wind up doing, usually during orientation week, there's an opportunity for students to meet with whoever the designated pre-health office is. It's been a while since I've done orientation. So Alexis, I know we were just talking about it because orientation's coming up pretty soon at Case Western Reserve. So how do students find out about the pre-health office if you happen to be a new student on campus?
Yeah, that's a great question. So at Case Western Reserve University specifically, if a student selected whenever they filled out their application to Case Western that they were pre-med, pre-health, pre-dental, like something in the healthcare field, they're automatically going to get added to my mailing list and they're going to get that personal invite from me to come to orientation. But if they didn't check it at that time on their application, it's not a big deal. They are still going to get the full schedule of events, the full itinerary for the week, which we call Discover Week at Case Western Reserve University, which I love. And they'll see when pre-med orientation is scheduled, like that's the goal. Come to pre-med orientation. That's where you will get invited into that Canvas page that I mentioned earlier. That's how you'll get added to our mailing list. It's how we'll explain when you need to schedule an appointment. How do you do that? This is where our workshop calendar is. So it's really the best way for you to get familiar with how to work with us as quickly as possible.
So whatever you do, when any student shows up, please make sure you legibly write your email address for the purposes of anyone trying to add you to the mailing list. I don't know if we've come to that point where it's more streamlined than that. I don't know.
It is, thankfully. We do have QR codes where people can check in, but I will inevitably lose my voice every year screaming, please check in. If you don't check in, I will not know that you were here.
Well, that's fantastic. So obviously we have the Canvas learning management system, or whatever it's called, on your various campuses. So let's go to one of the questions that I know we have here. So, when students interact with the pre-health advising office or a person who's the advisor, what should they expect and not expect from this type of interaction?
Yeah, that's a really good question. You should expect support. You should expect guidance. You should expect honesty. I always think of myself and I think of my team as, we're facilitators. We're facilitators of knowledge. We can help students and help future applicants understand how to do something. We can explain nuances of things that they may not be aware of. But what we aren't are decision makers. Like, we cannot tell you when you should do something, how you should do something. We'll give you our best advice, but you have to be the one that's acting on that advice. It has to be up to you, because this is your journey. This is your path, and you need to own it. And we're here to help you kind of along the way, right? But ultimately, it's on you to act. And, I would say another thing that I would always caution people about whenever, they're talking with their pre-health advisors or their pre-med advisors is phrasing questions in such a way as, if I do X, will it guarantee Y, right? Unfortunately, there are no guarantees in anything in this process. I always, joke, if there were a perfect formula to this, I would write that book, retire tomorrow, you would never see me again, right? But it's more about reflecting on what you're getting out of something. That's really important. So instead of thinking about guarantees, think about, like, what am I going to get out of this that's going to ultimately help me in the long run? And pre-health advisors can help you with that question, can help you navigate that reflection.
And so just making sure, is there anything they should not expect? So basically, because a lot of students I know pretty much want like a set of instructions or something kind of like to help them stay the straight and narrow, because they always know, okay, I just need to get straight A's, and if I get an A-, the whole world is over. Now, not that that's the case, but I just want to get a sense of the expectations that people have that are probably not, probably a little bit too lofty or inappropriate.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of along the same lines. Like, I see students throughout my whole career who have been like, if I just get a 4.0, if I just get 85th percentile MCAT, if I have 400 clinical hours, if I have XYZ, I'm good, right? I have no crystal ball. And if you meet someone who does, give me their phone number. I would love to talk to them. But yeah, that's not going to help you. That's not the right way to be having that conversation. So I would say that's definitely something that you shouldn't be doing, because it's just not going to be a productive meeting for you.
So while we're talking about meetings, that just dovetails into one of these great questions. When they do have advising appointments with you, how can students make the most out of that interaction that they have with you? So let's talk a little bit about how students sometimes tend to set up appointments, and then what things you suggest for them to make the most of your combined time.
Yeah. Number one, and this might sound obvious, but come prepared. I come with an agenda and come ready to take notes, because depending on what we're talking about, like, I may be throwing out dates, I may be throwing out timelines, I may be throwing out reflection questions for you to think about later. If you can remember all of those things a year from now, great, but that's probably not realistic. So you definitely want to be taking notes along the way as we're having our conversation. And kind of like we were talking about before, I think it's important to think about how you're framing your questions. I don't think it's going to be a productive use of your time whenever you're meeting with your pre-health advisor to ask, but how many hours of volunteering do I need in a clinic? I think the much better question, where you can have a really deep and thoughtful conversation, is, I've been volunteering at this clinic for a year. How can I talk about this experience in a way that's meaningful for my application when it's time for me to apply? These are the things I've been thinking through about it. That is way, way, way more thoughtful. And you're going to have way more meat coming out of that meeting than you are if you're just like, what's the bare minimum that I have to do?
That's great advice. And I mean, I know from my own experiences, one of the things that I will basically agree with, and I'll agree with you, Alexis, is that, if you're going to have an appointment with me, hopefully you do have a set of questions you want to make sure get answered. If you don't, and you just want to take me out to lunch or something, hey, I'm not gonna turn that down one way or another too, and that may be helpful. I've told people, especially on the faculty side, if you have a faculty pre-health advisor, that's not necessarily a bad idea. If you're a freshman or a sophomore, you want to get to know somebody who hopefully will help you a little bit later down the line with crafting your application, your profile, and whatever else. Get to know your faculty, and I'm always a big fan of, there's always a good opportunity to get to know whoever your professor is who's lecturing to you. Take them out to lunch, or certainly drop in on their office hours if they're a pre-health advisor, or certainly if they're doing intro bio, intro chem or something. You just don't know, even if you're a first year student, where that connection is going to really help you later on down the line, especially for summer opportunities that you may not necessarily know about, but your pre-health advisors might talk to you about. And hey, those opportunities, if you really aren't, if you're not thinking about them now, that's okay. I think one of the things too that I think, and Alexis, you can join me on this too, is we also, one of the things in terms of expecting is also we want to showcase opportunities, and we want you to think not just about getting into medical school, but also preparing your application, and getting exposure, whether it's to have summer programs that give you more clinical exposure, or perhaps some research opportunities, or something that's kind of a hybrid, like intro to research. Those sorts of things I think are very helpful. And I think those of us who have been pre-health advisors who've seen students be successful can give you a sense of what other students have done, and have you sort of think and plan your future accordingly. So I want you, what are your thoughts about that, Alexis?
No, I think that's really important, right? Because, you might have some friends that are pre-med or pre-health, but I'm talking to those students every single day that maybe you're not aware of, and I'm getting to know them really well. So I think that it is, to your point, if you're interested in doing something, but you don't really have shape to it, like I would like to volunteer with an underserved community, but I don't really know what that means. I don't know where to look for opportunities like that. I would like to talk about what are some possibilities for that. That's a great conversation to have with your pre-health advisor for sure.
So yeah, I just want to remind those of you who are joining us live, if you have any questions, please use the comment section, and Laura will relay any questions and interrupt, our little conversation we're having here, so we could at least address some of your questions about how to work with pre-health advisors and make the most of that relationship and those resources. We'd mentioned, and I know we kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier, your office, you do a lot of other things other than just one-on-one appointments. So how can, in your opinion, how can things like group advising or workshops, or small groups, or even somewhat larger groups, even things like newsletters, listservs, and so forth, how can these be used in a way that's just as helpful as one-on-one meetings?
Yeah, so there are two things that come to mind to me, honestly, when thinking about this question. I think one of the most important things that happens when you're in a workshop, when you're in a group advising appointment, whatever the setting might be, where it's more than just you and another person, what's going to happen is other people are going to ask questions, other people are going to make comments, and you're going to start to realize things that you hadn't even thought about yet. That's going to prompt you to think about things a little bit differently. So even though you're there with other people and it's not that one-on-one experience, you're still getting maybe more out of that than you might if it was just a one-on-one meeting, because you have other people infusing their ideas, their perspectives, their comments, their concerns into that space. So it's just going to expand how you're thinking about whatever issue it is that's being discussed. The second thing that I would say about that is that I feel like I almost always, just speaking personally, have more productive conversations, more intentional conversations with students after they have taken advantage of some of those group advising and some of those workshops, because then they can come with those questions that we've been talking about, that's about reflection, about strategy, and not just really, really basic, because they're picking things up in those settings. That's really important. So I think it's really important to take advantage of those things. If it helps you think about something differently, or if it raises concerns that maybe you didn't have, that's a great time to have that one-on-one advising meeting after that's over. And I think newsletters, announcements, they're critical. I know you're going to have tons of emails kind of flooding at you all at once, and it's just never going to stop throughout the semester. That doesn't make them less important though, right? It is really, really important for you to stay on top of your inbox, on top of those email communications, because I would hate for you to be the perfect applicant for an opportunity that, you know, might be sent out about getting some really great clinical experience or getting connected with a PI for research. But if you're not checking your email and you're not staying on top of those newsletters, you're not going to be able to take advantage of that.
So can you talk a little bit about how, you know, if you were to do group advising, I'm pretty sure everything is pretty much out in the open in terms of when you can drop in for group advising or any of these other workshops. How does it work hand in hand with like the Canvas, as I know we talk about the online learning management system?
Yeah.
Is there sort of a schedule, or I don't know what pace you would want people to complete the course, do group meetings or workshops? You know, obviously there's a lot of options in terms of how to do things. So I don't know what you or your team prefers in terms of making sure people do the course, and you know, when do they complete it, or complete as many items, or versus, you know, these group opportunities.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Well, I would say in terms of like the workshops, the group things that we do, it's really a choose your own adventure scenario. Definitely, we will always suggest audiences that are best for that particular workshop. Like if we're doing a mock interview workshop, we're going to say this is really great for juniors, seniors, and alumni in the application process. But that doesn't mean you can't come if you're a freshman and you're just super curious. So you can take advantage of whatever you feel like makes the most sense for you in the moment in terms of all of those workshops. As far as Canvas goes, our learning management system, there are a couple of modules that we have that I think are really perfect for first-year students and second-year students, where you don't really need to do anything, but just take in the information. We call them the Getting Started at Case Western Reserve University modules and the Preparing models, preparing to be pre-med, preparing to be pre-health. And it has all of those questions that are haunting you, like, will my AP credits count for anything? Can I take online courses? What should I major in? I know it has to be biology, right? Like all of those things that you're thinking about that are super basic, we've already given you that information there. So I would say day one is when you should take advantage of that early stuff. But the later modules that are about the application process specifically, I would say as you get closer to that time, maybe as a rising junior, I would start getting into that. And that might help you, you know, or not, it might be one of the things that helps you determine when you're ready to apply.
Do you have any sort of embedded incentives? I don't know if you like, I know people love badges and gamifying everything. I don't know if that's something that any of your advisees, whether it's in the course or even doing, you know, all the workshops or the other group, the group workshops or something like that. I don't know. Is there any way that advising can be fun for any of your advisees, or have you thought about anything like that?
Oh, goodness. I feel like I might have some spoilers. So it is something that we are definitely thinking about, because I know that students are getting things out of these workshops. I know they're getting things out of these meetings with us, but I also like the idea of, you know, having them recognized for putting in that effort, putting in that time to grow and develop personally and professionally through taking advantage of our resources. So perhaps there is something on the horizon this coming year. I won't say what exactly. But in terms of other incentives, you know, as far as the Canvas course goes, is something that our students who go through our committee letter process that we have at Case Western have to do.
Okay. Yeah, we won't spill the beans, and even so, it's only just at Case Western Reserve as far as we know. So just making sure we, you know, don't just be pre-med just because of whatever goodies that we give you, even though they are very important. Okay, so let me see. And I know one of the things that's really important is certainly on the one-on-one meetings is understanding, you know, why being very honest with advisors is important. So what's the benefit of being honest with your advisor, especially when you feel like things aren't going as well or as well as you hoped?
Yeah, I mean, so I would say, like, think about this. Like, if you go to the doctor's office and they ask you, like, how are you doing? And you say, oh, I'm totally fine. But you've had this terrible ache in your foot for 3 months. it's not going to get better if you don't tell them that something's wrong, right? So if you're not being upfront with your pre-health advisor or pre-med advisor when you go to them and you're talking about classes, maybe organic chemistry isn't going well, they're not going to be able to connect you to resources if you don't tell them about that. Or, you know what, they can just kind of sit with you and say, like, that's really challenging. I'm really sorry to hear that's happening. And they can just listen to you. They're there for that. They're there to support you, and they're there to connect you with things when you need to be connected. And, I would say the flip side to that is maybe you can go to your pre-health advisor and say, like, I feel like things aren't going that well. And they might tell you they sound fine based on the information that you're sharing. Maybe it's all internally, like you are your harshest critic, as is everyone. Maybe you're doing much better than you think you are, but how are you going to get that feedback if you don't put that feeling out there? So I would say, as honest as you can feel, like being in that moment, you're going to get a lot of benefit out of having that conversation. It might be tough. It might be difficult, but that's okay. Sometimes things are tough and difficult. It doesn't mean they're going to stay tough and difficult. You have to begin to acknowledge that in order to work through it.
And yes, thank you, Alexis. And definitely, if you're going to become a physician or anybody in the healthcare field, that type of self-reflection is really, really critical and important regardless. And so, I think pre-health, and certainly the pre-med sort of corner of pre-health, seems to always like to catastrophize so many different things, or they love comparing their progress versus other people. And I think one of the things that I think being honest to getting at least an advisor's point of view is really making sure that you're not making a mountain out of a molehill, or whatever the right analogy or idiom is going to be about that. It's like, yes, you really are doing fine, or let's go ahead and problem solve. If you're having difficulty with keeping up with classes, how are you studying? And then we can see if there are resources that we can provide for you. Certainly, if there's something a little bit more on the personal side, we'll do as best as we can if we're trained appropriately, or if not, we'll just we'll refer you to other people who can help you, because your university has a ton of different resources, and it's a lot to place on just one office or even one person to be able to provide everything comprehensively. But that's why we have a university behind you too. So again, it's important to know how to self-reflect, and again, whether you do that in your own writing, or maybe I don't know exactly how you try to share your feelings with other people that you trust. But you have to be honest with yourself, and you're going to ultimately be honest with people who you're going to be training with in medical school. And certainly you have to give honest news to patients as well. Alexis, I don't know if you guys are doing anything in your program, at least to help people with self-reflection. And I know this is hopefully a softball for you because you have that background.
No, that's so great. Well, so a couple of things. I think the biggest kind of tool that we have that people could take advantage of at any time is a self-assessment that we have in Canvas that, asks students, future applicants, to go in and kind of for themselves evaluate the strength of their candidacy in different areas that are important to the application process, like patient interaction, like potentially research, depending on the schools you're interested in applying to, like service, like leadership. And there are a few other different categories as well. And it asks you, like, are you developing in this area? Are you really strong in this area? Are you exceeding expectations in this area? And there's different qualifiers for what those things are. So I think that that's really helpful, because that can prompt you to just have a conversation with yourself. Like, hopefully you bring that self-assessment to us. That's where I think like some real magic happens, where you can say, like, I thought I was doing better in X, but based on this, I think it's Y. Let's talk about that. Right. I think that's where, we have those magic moments that I call them in our advising appointments, where we can really get to like the root of what somebody's worried about or what somebody's excited about, and talk about, the implications of that.
Great. I just wanted to hop in and remind everybody, if you do have questions and you would like us to answer them here live, please enter them in the comment section and we will be able to bring them up on screen and answer those live. And one other thing is you guys were talking about having those difficult conversations, like you were saying, Emil, you're going to have difficult conversations with your patients, with people. So that is a skill set, and you can bring that to potentially your advising appointments as well, and being able to build that ability to have those tough conversations. Go ahead.
Yep. No, I was going to say, and absolutely. I don't know if we have questions coming in. I do encourage you, if you have questions, please bring them in. Even, if you are currently enrolled in an undergraduate institution, if you do have any questions on how to work with your pre-health advisors. Obviously, and one of the things that I also want to make sure is I don't know how frequently, I guess, you would like to have students drop by in terms of giving questions. Certainly, if they have any questions whatsoever, that's fine. But is there a particular, I won't say cadence, but it's like, when do you feel it'd be appropriate to, meet with an advisor? Even if a student feels ready, that they feel that, they're ready to apply on their own. So they hadn't attended all of the other workshop sessions, but they got their AMCAS application ready and they're just sort of rearing to go. So, what are some of the things about that?
So as far as, how often, how frequently you should be meeting with an advisor, I mean, I'm going to be honest. I just feel like that's very different for every individual. I think sometimes there might be a student who just needs to have one deep, intense, meaningful conversation with us. And then they're pretty self-directed. They know what needs to happen. They've self-assessed. They know how to act on it based on our conversation. And they're kind of good to go. I think sometimes students need more than that. I think sometimes they need a little bit more checking in, a little bit more of those reflective conversations happening organically over time. So I would just advise students to kind of, as we've been talking about, recently, like possess that self-awareness, know what you need, advocate for yourself. If you need to meet a couple of times a semester, then you make a couple of appointments a semester. If you need to meet once a year, that's great too. But I'm sorry, remind me of the question that was on the screen. I lost it.
No, definitely. It was like, what are the benefits, especially if a student feels ready and they want to do things on their own?
Yeah, which, it's great. I always get really excited to talk with students who feel really good about the process, because, we're coming not from that place of anxiety or hesitancy. It's this genuine, like, I'm so excited to begin this process. That's a great conversation to have. But I would say, even if you feel ready, even if you feel excited and just like, absolutely, you're going to jump in head first, I would still have that conversation. I would still have that meeting with your advisor, because quite frankly, you don't know what you don't know. Right. And I think it's always good to have a second set of eyes to kind of be that objective lens saying, okay, I see where you are with X. This is what data tells me about that. How do you feel about that based on this information that I have? Right? Because you may find in talking with your advisor, even though you feel like you're ready to go, there are some areas where you could be a little bit stronger. So you might want to put in just a little bit more work, just a little bit more effort into strengthening those parts of your application. Because I say over and over all the time, I want you to do this once. I don't ever want you to have to relive this if you don't have to. So I want you to apply when you're the strongest applicant you can be. And if there's something that you can improve just a little bit, I want you to have the opportunity to do that.
That's absolutely great advice. Yes, thank you. And I think there's many of us who say, however long it takes, put up your best application as the first time. Do it once if you could ever possibly do it. I want to also get your sense, because I think so many people, even when they think they're ready to apply, just get so worked up about the whole elements of the application process, and namely the personal statement. It seems to be like the big, heavy lift that so many applicants really have trouble sort of trying to figure out, how do I deal with this blank space of 5,000 plus characters? So what are your thoughts in terms of helping people, or how does the office, if they do, help people kind of come up with the personal statement, at least crafting a very solid personal statement as well as other elements of the application?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that because my background is in writing, I have kind of a unique perspective on it. And I always like to tell people not to start at the beginning. I think starting at the beginning is a mental trap where you can, maybe write a beautiful introduction, and then halfway through your personal statement, it goes in a different direction. And now you're asking yourself, which part do you keep? Because these parts don't work together. Start in the middle. I would just start writing about all of your experiences side by side. I would write what you did, what you experienced, what you learned, what you felt, what surprised you, what challenged you. Start writing about what happened and what you took away from it. And then I think you can take a step back and say, what were some of these defining moments that I can start to create a really cohesive story with, that feels authentic and true to my motivation to pursue medicine? Because at the end of the day, that's what your personal statement is. It is about your motivation to pursue medicine. What are the experiences that you have had? Not all of them, not listing your resume and your personal statement, 2, maybe 3 that have been really formative for you, that have really helped you see medicine in a different way, that have helped you think differently about patient care, about yourself, right? But I think it's hard to start at the beginning if you haven't organized those experiences yet. So that's what we always really like to talk about students with. And we do have personal statement workshops as well that students are invited to in the spring semester when it gets to application season. I start in the middle. And I think it's a lot easier to kind of build around that.
That's cool advice too. Do you have a particular, when you say start in the middle, how early should they really start thinking about the personal statement and starting about in the middle and sort of going through various iterations and drafts and possible sort of storylines? Or, I don't know what's worked for you or your observations.
No, that's a good question. I kind of think about it the way students ask me, like, when should I start studying for the MCAT? And it's like, well, you're kind of studying for the MCAT this whole time, even if it doesn't feel like it, just by taking these classes. So hopefully if you're taking our advice, the way I'm sure every pre-health advisor would advise students to have really thorough documentation on your experiences as you're having them, and not just say, I'm going to do something this year, I'll write about it in 2 years. That's not going to help you. You're not going to remember how you felt in that moment, good or bad. So hopefully along the way, you're keeping good track of things, of what you're doing, what you're feeling, what questions are coming up for you in those experiences, so that when you do get to, the summer going into your junior year, or maybe your senior year, if you're taking a gap year, you're not starting from zero. You already have this wonderful library, this collection of thoughts and feelings and experiences and reflections to start with.
All right. So any common questions that you wind up fielding when it comes to, activities, certainly in terms of like, what are some really impactful activities that I should look into if I'm a pre-health student? So depending on how you want to go with a generic question like that, what are some of the things that you try to help at least communicate to advisees about how they should, pursue, look into meaningful experiences that inform them more about, what is expected of them as a future healthcare professional?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I get a lot of questions just centered on amount, like quantity of experiences, right? Like, how much do I have to volunteer? How much do I have to shadow? And it's not a bad question, but it's not the right question, right? I think that it's important to keep in mind throughout this whole process that it's about consistency and it's about growth over time, because I would hate to be the person that tells a student, I think you need to, volunteer with this organization for 200 hours. And then you do that in a year, your freshman year, and then you never volunteer again. What is that saying? It's saying you don't really value service. It's saying you don't really value engaging with your community and advocating for others and supporting others. You were checking a box, right? I think that's the temptation. I want a formula to go by. I'm going to do exactly that and no more. So I think that's something I see a lot is how much, not how much. What am I going to get out of this? How am I going to grow from this? How is this going to help me become better? That's the better question. But, you know, I definitely have students ask about what are the right volunteering experiences. We always talk about volunteering in hospitals, of course, but I think that it's not common knowledge, especially among incoming students, that it's not just one kind of service. For example, with this particular question, it's great if you want to go volunteer at the hospital. I think you should. I think it's helpful. I think it's important. But that's not the only place that you can help others. And that's what this is about, is demonstrating that you have the heart of a servant, right? So you can go to the food bank. You can go to the local animal shelter. You can go to wherever speaks to you and your values and your passions. But again, it comes back to you. What do you care about? Go do that thing. That's the right volunteering experience, because when it comes time to write about it and when it comes time to talk about it in an interview, you're going to be passionate about it. It's going to come through in how you talk about it. And it's not going to be something that's performative because you thought you were supposed to volunteer at X and you didn't really get a lot out of it because you just didn't feel connected to it.
I know our next Expert Advice live session, I know I get to talk a lot about leadership experiences. And so I wanted to get your ideas and your thoughts about when people are looking for leadership experiences, you know, what things sort of impress you, or what comments would you give the advisees that I know you get to see about leadership experiences and what's, quote, important?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think that, you know, we have the fortune to have a lot of applicants at Case Western Reserve University who have very compelling leadership experiences, whether it's with student organizations, sometimes it's with national associations, which is so cool to see. Sometimes it's with on-campus things like the Residence Hall Association, or maybe they're part of student government. Maybe they're on the student conduct committee. So those are all great. Being a teaching assistant, being a tutor, that's a form of leadership to me. You didn't have to do that. You didn't have to spend your time helping others understand this complex material. You didn't have to mentor them, but you did. So I think that that's great. But I always like to talk with students about, you know, being careful about how they think of leadership, because I think it's very, very natural and very normal and totally understandable to tie leadership with a specific title, right? But we were just talking about volunteering. You may not put like lead volunteer on your application to medical school, but how you talk about things, how you tell the story matters. By engaging with your community, by serving others. Yes, it's service, but that's leadership. You are giving up your time. You are putting others before yourself. You're taking charge in a situation by participating in that activity. So just thinking about how leadership shows up in quiet ways is, I think, really important. And I think whenever students can kind of reframe that in their heads, I think they're able to talk about things more confidently as it relates to their application.
Yes, thanks for commenting about that. Because obviously, yeah, I think people are, I guess, really they get a little bit worked up talking about leadership roles and sort of the impact, but they do gravitate towards the titles. and it's
they
like,
do. Not everybody can be on an exec board, right? It's just, you can't always have a specific title, but you can still demonstrate leadership through your activities.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we didn't actually cover this, but you do interact with people who already graduated, so alumni and so forth. Could you explain a little bit more sort of that relationship, especially, you know, if someone had already graduated, whether they were pre-med before or even not pre-med when they graduated? You know, what is that interaction like when it comes to, you know, someone reaching out to you saying, hey, I'm an alum of Case, and I'm now thinking about going into medical school after however many years of, I don't know, being in computer science or something like that, you know, which is apparently really common now. People are turning away from coding and want to go back to med school or dental school or something. So what is that connection like if someone were to contact you or other members of the office?
Yeah, so I would say like most of the alumni that we work with probably are very recent grads that we probably know really well. But sometimes we will get, people coming back after working 10 years in finance and saying, I actually really wanted to do this and I just was afraid, or I just didn't think I could do it, or, whatever the reason might be. And so, what that connection looks like for us is, I think, just establishing what is that motivation? Like, where is this coming from? Like, tell me a little bit more about your why right now. Because as anybody going through this process knows, your why is going to evolve over time as you have more experiences and as you grow. Your why for doing this will change, and that's okay. But what is the why that's bringing you to this major life shift potentially right now? So I think it's really just starting out with that first meeting, maybe in that second meeting, which is really getting to know and understand what they want to do, why they want to do it. And then we can get more into, kind of like the very traditional, here's resources for X, here's the timeline for Y. But, we may find sometimes in talking with people that they don't actually want to do this. They don't understand the process. And maybe if they did, they wouldn't have created that appointment in the first place. But that's why we're here, right? So I think it's getting to know that person in that 30 minutes or 1 hour meeting, or however advising is structured at your institution, to understand a little bit more about them, to understand how best you can help them with this potentially big life change.
Sounds great. Yeah, no, and I think it is so important, especially, if you're thinking about making a huge shift in one's career. And again, depending on how long it's been, certainly there's a lot more to consider and a lot more people that sort of get involved with those types of conversations. One question I know I didn't put in here. Obviously, we have a lot of really, really motivated students at places like Case. A lot of very, high recognition schools. And there's always been the question that I've had to field for many times. It's like, I'm an undergrad at Case. What are my chances? Are my chances easier to get into the medical school than the dental school at Case? What sort of things, how do you sort of, calm the nerves down about, I think I should, because I already know all these faculty members, or I've already done research at Case. It gives me that leg up in the process. So how do you try to keep everybody realistic on that?
Yeah, that's tough because, I don't think that, you're going to find a lot of undergraduate institutions who have like a pipeline kind of like preference for their own undergrads as far as their medical schools go, even though it seems like it should be that way. I think sometimes to people, it's really not. So, I encourage students to obviously apply where they feel like they fit best. And that's where I really try to start that conversation is like, what is it about Case? What is it about the School of Medicine here that is appealing to you? What are the tracks there that you're interested in? Who are the faculty that you're interested in working with? What's the research or some kind of experience you can have there that you can't have somewhere else? Sometimes people have really good answers to that question. Sometimes they don't know, except they know that they've been to the campus, they know current med students there, and they just know they want to go. But, I think that once you move beyond stats, which stats are important, they will open doors for you, but it's always going to be fit, your experiences, your stories that will get you invited to a seat at the table at a medical school. So if you're really heavy on research and you have great clinical experience, I would tell my students the same thing I would tell any other potential applicant to Case Western. You have good stats, you have those things. Yeah, you're probably a good applicant. That's a tough school. It's a really, really tough school. But yeah, it sounds like you would fit. If you don't have any research experience, if your stats aren't where you feel comfortable about relative to what their stats are, that's probably going to be a tough uphill battle. Doesn't mean it's impossible. It just means it's going to be maybe not as realistic as another medical school could be for you.
While we're talking about other medical schools, about how many schools do you normally see candidates or applicants applying for? And how do you get them how do you stop them from applying for like 100 schools?
If I could. So that's a good question because, I know the national average for like the last 5 years has been around 18, right? 18 schools on average. We trend higher from Case Western Reserve University. On average, our applicants apply to 25 schools. I would say our average accepted applicants apply to around 28, 29. But we will have sometimes those people who shoot their shots with like 3 or 4 that they feel good about, and then those people who will throw pasta at the wall with 68 schools to see what sticks. Gives me a lot of anxiety personally. But yeah, it's hopefully having those conversations in a one-on-one advising meeting in our workshops that we have about like, how do you build a strategic school list? Hopefully those things are heard and acted on. But, at the end of the day, kind of like, I talked about in the beginning, it's up to you how you want to execute this, how you want to pursue this, because at the end of the day, regardless of what I say or maybe what family says or pre-med influencers say, hopefully you're doing the thing that will help you sleep at night. That's what matters.
All right. And then the last prepared question we have here is sort of limited. And obviously there are a lot of schools that have very strong pre-health advising support. What about students that find that their institution has very limited support, or it doesn't really exist the same way at their institution? One of our colleagues actually wrote an article that just came out, I guess, about a couple of days ago. Jason over at Carnegie Mellon actually had something that was printed over at AAMC, their aspiring docs story about, what do you do if you don't have a pre-health advisor? So I wanted to get, we'll run over and we'll look at that article really quickly too. But from your standpoint, what can you do if students have limited pre-health advising, or they feel their pre-health advising support is limited at where they are?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and both of those things are equally valid. It may truly not exist, or you may just feel like it's not accessible to you for some reason, whatever that might be. So, I mean, a few things that come to mind, even if there is no pre-health advising office, or maybe the support is limited, I would say that doesn't mean that the students who are interested in it are limited. So I would definitely always advise students to connect with those student organizations, connect with peers, connect with people who are going through this process. Find a mentor, find somebody who's in it with you, who can kind of, be a soundboard for you. I would definitely advise students to do that. I would definitely advise students to talk to faculty in their major to see if they have any connections for them as far as this goes. But my most favorite story in working with students, I have so many, about networking, is I have this lovely student who's at Harvard right now. He's doing absolutely amazing. But he read a book by a researcher, and he was really interested in it. And so he found that researcher's contact information and said, I really am interested in your research. I would love to, do you have 5 minutes to talk about this? Because I would love to do something like this. I would like a project like this. I always advise students, go onto LinkedIn, get connected, talk with people. You would be surprised at how easily you saying, do you have 5 minutes to talk, turns into 15, turns into 20, turns into an actual meaningful relationship where they're invested in you. You're invested in them. And, as weird as it feels, right, to do that cold outreach, I know students always feel weird about it. I totally get it. I promise you, though, 99% of the time, somebody on the other end of that screen is going to be so flattered that you think that they can help you, that they're going to be absolutely open to that. So, use those resources. Definitely use NAP, the National Association for Health Professions. Like, they can connect you with an advisor. If you don't have one at your institution, they can connect you with one. Student Doctor Network has great advising that can help you. But it's out there. Just because it's maybe not in that physical space where you're looking for a person with a title, it doesn't mean you can't still get the support you need.
And I know for me, one of the things that surprises so many people is the fact that they don't reach out to admissions people at all for whatever reason. Wow. It's really surprising. It's like, no, you can reach out to us. We don't mind having to take a break from reviewing applications or anything else that definitely distracts us from our time. We love the distractions of talking to students. That's at least hopefully one of our job descriptions is like, talk to students, get them excited about coming to our program. And I don't know if you have sort of a primer to help people at Case if they were to reach out to, to an admissions person, what should they say, those sorts of things. I don't know if you have certain guidelines that would help people know what to talk about, when it comes to talking to someone on the admission side.
Yeah, I mean, I think whenever you're talking about interacting with somebody on the admissions side, like, I agree. I think they're always going to be really happy to talk with you when they're available, but you want to be very specific about what questions do you have for them, because we can talk about things generally all day long, but if you need to know something about a school to help you in your process or to, help you as a candidate, you need to come in with an agenda and you need to be super clear, because you want to maximize that time because it's precious when you're talking with an admissions representative.
Yeah. Please don't ask us what our average MCAT or GPA is. That almost, it's like to the early days of virtual fairs, it was just like there'd always be like 2 or 3 people just sort of basically just carpet bombing all of the virtual tables and say, what's your GPA, average GPA, and MCAT score? And I'm like, what are you doing? So yeah, no, we want a meaningful conversation with you too. And that's, you don't want us to point out, hey, this information's on our website, or it's in the medical school or dental school admissions requirement databases and whatever else have you. It's like, come on, you do want to actually, if you're serious about coming to our program, please have something that you really want to learn about us. And it's surprising. I guess it's a little surprising how students don't get to that point. That's me complaining, or at least from my vantage point.
Yeah, I mean, you want to be sure you're bringing something substantial to that conversation, to the questions that you have. Absolutely.
Is there a particular favorite event that you run, or at least that you found very, very satisfying, having been able to organize and run as part of the pre-health advising program, or what you all do?
Oh my gosh, I think two events come to mind, and I really, really enjoy them both. The first thing that comes to mind is our mock MMI day, where we do in office like a live MMI session. It involves recruiting faculty and staff and students from the medical school. Sometimes admissions people from the medical school come over, which is really cool, to serve as interviewers to give students that MMI experience. And then when they're all done rotating through their stations, they come debrief with me, and you could just see on their face, they're like, oh my God, what just happened? But it's so great. It's so great that we're able to give them that experience, because MMI can be challenging to practice for on your own. So it's really cool that we're able to do that. But I would say my second favorite, I don't even know what's second. I like them both equally. Every fall we do an event that we call Creating Your Narrative for Medical School, where we bring in applicants in the current cycle who all have very distinct kind of experiences and themes to their application, and who are in different majors, who are in different years. Some of them have already graduated, some of them are juniors, some of them are seniors, to just kind of talk about how they got to this point of applying, to really highlight that there is no one right linear path. Everybody's path is unique and different, and they can share a little bit of how they kind of found their niche along the way, which was really cool.
Yeah, no, that sounds like a really cool program. And it's curious you're doing in the MMI workshops. It's like, I don't remember the medical school doing MMIs before. So that must be interesting for them. I don't remember if they
don't, but they're really good colleagues. They come over and they help out for me as volunteer interviewers.
Yeah, I know that's certainly not I think Cincinnati, their medical school definitely does MMIs, and their pre-health team definitely enjoys having their MMI workshop down there too. That's really kind of cool. But yeah, it's good to keep those other the med school faculty on their toes over there. Yeah. It's like, you could have done it this way. So in any case, is there anything that you wish pre-health students knew about the process, that anything that you wish you can convey more urgently that they really should understand?
Oh, that's a really good question. I guess I just sort of think about how I kind of sign off with orientation every year, and even with our session on applying to medical school. So freshmen and then seniors and alumni. The last parting piece of advice that I give, regardless of where you are in this process, is control what you can control. There's so many parts about this process that are frankly just not up to you, right? That you don't really get to affect, but you get to decide when you apply. You get to decide where you apply. It's not up to you what happens after you click that submit button, right? But you're the one who gets to make the choice of how it happens in the first place. So I always say, control what you can control, focus on that, and good things will come.
Thanks so much, Alexis. I don't know, Laura, if there were any other questions. I guess I know we kept talking through, and I know I didn't see anybody else coming in, but I don't know, Laura, if you had questions for us before we do sign off.
No, I mean, the only question I would have is, I know that we've had a lot of focus on the pre-med and medical school. What is your advice for those students who are looking at other careers, so veterinary, dental, or psychology, or some other health profession?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I would say it's really not that different. I would say even if the end goal looks different, the process itself is very similar. It's all about discovery. It's all about growth. It's all about learning by doing, right? So I think if you're interested in being a dentist, you need to shadow dentists. You need to get dental experience, whether you're volunteering in a dental office or you're working. That would be great if you were a dental assistant. You still need to engage with service. If you want to go to a research-driven school, you still need to engage in research. You still need to develop as a leader, as a team player, right? So I would say the mechanics are virtually the same, even if timelines and different process details at the endpoint aren't identical.
Yeah, I can't disagree. I mean, basically, healthcare is so integrated, especially interprofessionally, and I've always had that perspective and case overall in terms of the med school, the nursing school, the dental school, their a PA program, their anesthesiology assistant program. They all do a lot of collaborating together, and obviously every school has different combinations of health professions careers too, but I mean, in the end, there's so many different options and possibilities that you do want to think about it in terms of, what do you want to do? And, and certainly, the beginnings are all the same in terms of discerning what path you want to do. And the details of VMCAS, ACOMAS, all of those, all the other, all of the application services, they're similar and different in their own way too. I agree with that. So. Yeah.
Great. Well, we're just about out of time here. So we appreciate very much, Alexis, for you taking the time to answer the questions and talk about working in an advising office and what students should be aware of as they work with their advisors going into this next school year, as well as Emil, thank you again for providing our expertise. Our next session is going to be in 2 weeks, and it is going to be on the topic of leadership. So we invite you to join us then. If you have questions, again, you're always able to put those questions in advance on the Student Doctor Network forums, or you can put the questions in on the live stream and we will answer them live. So again, thank you very much for taking the time, and we hope everyone has a great evening.